And here we are. Jimmy.
Good
morning.
How are you today?
I'm very fine, thank you.
You look very well in the chairman's seat.
I know. Usually I'm seated next to you.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not as warm over here without you. City Abari. It's good to be back.
Good to have you back.
Asante.
Big things to be discussed today.
Yes.
And many questions to be asked, but City is going to do the business and welcome you properly for today's proverb.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Niger. You know, for the longest time, before I met and got to know Ndu, I knew it was called Niger.
Yes.
And she told me, sir.
Did I say sir? Okay.
Niger River is Niger River and it's in Nigeria.
Yes.
That country is called Niger. I said, oh, okay. So, Niger. He who does not mend his clothes will soon have none. That's a proverb for the day.
He who does not mend his habits
will soon have none.
Or will have bad habits.
Or will have bad habits. Atamalizika.
And that is a good one.
Okay. Needs no interpretation. Okay, so Jimmy, we've been having questions, sometimes worrying conversations, actually most times worrying conversations about fiscal responsibility in Kenya. What owed, what not owed, what truly owed, what could be the problem. Another one of those elements is Eurobonds. Let's do a little bit of background to this. So before we get into some definitions about exactly what's going on, $2 billion. $2 billion is staring Kenya in the face. June 2024, latest Eurobond payment must be made. Not can we make it, not is it possible that we make it later. No, June 2024, Eurobond payment must be made. It's a debt. First of all, what is the Eurobond? And why does Kenya then have that debt responsibility of paying it?
Wonderful. As I said, it's good to be back. I think just to give you context, let us talk about all the Eurobonds that were taken and come back to your 2 billion that are due this coming financial year. The first Eurobond, which is what you're saying is to be taken, is to be paid this year, was $2 billion taken 10 years ago, owed to Standard Chartered Bank through JP Morgan Stanley. JP Morgan Chase, in fact, is the word. And this was a 10-year bond payable, as you said, June next year. The second Eurobond was taken, creditor is Citibank. This is due February 2028, $1 billion. Another billion was taken by the creditor Citibank, due again February 28th, $1 billion. So that's $2 billion due in 2028. Then you have another one by Citi, what they call Citigroup Global Markets Europe AG, $900 million. Payable in equal installments commencing 2025 May. And you have another one, so Citigroup Global Markets Europe AG of $1.2 billion, commencing again payments in 3 equal installments starting 2030 to 2022. So the total Eurobonds taken have been $6.1 billion, just to give a global perspective. That in today's value is over 900 billion Kenya shillings. Okay. So 6.1, 900 billion shillings plus.
Okay. Okay.
So that's an important perspective. Now, you've asked a very good question. Why were they taken? I think I've been here before, and I don't want to belabor the point about what is called authentic debt. Why do we take debt? We take debt for only 2 purposes. One is for development, and the second is for short-term cash flow problems that the Treasury may be facing. And those two provisions are anchored in PFM law, section 15.2, where it says you can only borrow for development.
Yes.
You cannot borrow for recurrent expenditure. And section 53, which says you shall only borrow for the budget as approved by Parliament. And this approval is done in the appropriations, allocations for loans as approved by Parliament. So the law is very clear.
Yeah.
Now, the short-term cash flow problems can only be 5%
Yes.
of the last audited accounts. So in the last audited accounts, you had a revenue of about, tax returns, you had a revenue of about 1.9 trillion. So the maximum probably you could take is about 90 billion Kenya shillings as an overdraft at CBK. So this is very clear. So what was the Eurobond of 2024? Now, this was the first Eurobond the country took. And it was heralded as a milestone. I remember the president at the time on the steps of State House talking about how people are very interested in investing in the Eurobond. And his statement was very telling. And I don't know why people didn't draw much attention to it. He said, we are borrowing this so that we don't have to borrow money locally anymore. So we are getting out of the domestic market. But he did not say what it was going to fund.
Yes.
Slowly but surely, they tried to say that it is funding infrastructure. In other words, development. Now, we have audited all these accounts, and I want to state here categorically, without any contradiction, any fear of any contradiction, that all the Eurobonds, including this 2 billion, have not funded one project. One project in the development budget of the last 10 years.
Jim.
None do, I can assure you, none.
Jimmy.
Yes.
So where did the money go?
Yes. Now, this is what I want to explain, and I said last time, I shall begin that explanation. It is very interesting that about 2015, 2016, a very good friend of mine, the late Jacob Juma, brought this to my attention. And I'll tell you a human interest story here because I think it's important. Jacob Juma had been analyzing the quarterly reports of the Treasury. And he said, I thought we were borrowing Eurobonds so that we don't borrow domestic.
Yes.
But when I look at the quarterly reports, it is showing that we are borrowing domestic.
In addition to having gotten
In
the
addition to receiving the Eurobond.
Okay.
And it's the exact amount, roughly about 200, 300 billion shillings at the time, as the Eurobond. So it seems like we didn't stop. So where is the permission in the budget to borrow Eurobond? This must have been a heist. At the time, 2015, I was working very closely with Raila Amolo Odinga. And we presented this to him. And we agreed that the way we'll address it is by asking the Treasury questions. So he very quickly got his able legal man called Paul Mwangi to write on his behalf to Henry Rotich, who was then heading the Treasury. And Henry Rotich was given a deadline, 14 days, under which he should publish where the monies of Eurobond are, whether they came into the country and what they have been spent for. And Raila said at the time that in 14 days he shall go to the Treasury and collect this evidence. The night before the deadline was over, the Treasury very gladly posted on the website all the details of the Eurobond transactions, from beginning to what we perceived was the end. And we were very excited.
But what they presented was the end.
Good one, CT. Now, what was most interesting is that they tried to explain their story, and it did not make sense to any of us. So they said that they received a total of 1.99 billion, almost $2 billion, from JP Morgan Stanley. So on June 19th, 2014, they say an account was opened, a JP Morgan Stanley account in New York for the Eurobond receipt. Now, I can see you squinting your eyes.
I'm concerned.
Because that was the beginning of what we call the money laundering scheme of Eurobond. Complete money laundering. The law is very clear about where our monies go. The consolidated fund, which in PFM is called the Exchequer account, National Exchequer account.
Yes.
Is where all monies, all revenues received by government must go. Taxes, debt, everything. Because it is from there, as you had the controller budget here a few months ago, actually now, where she says she gives approval for any transaction that goes out.
Yeah.
So for the central bank or the national treasury to open an account outside of here to receive revenues on our behalf is the first stage of illegality.
So what if, let's look at it very simply here. If you were borrowing money as Kenya,
Yes.
it only makes sense that the institution or the entity that was loaning you this money
Yes.
would put the money in your account.
That is the law.
Yeah, but
Is it not?
But let me ask, which account?
No.
It's only one account.
It's only one account
It's
that
called
should
the
receive
National
money.
Exchequer account,
Yeah,
which is
that
the
would receive money.
consolidated fund.
There's a reason.
That is the constitution.
Yes.
The constitution.
Yeah.
Because that is the only place that you can then spend.
So you can receive and
government
transact on
expenditure.
that only according to the law.
Only.
I get that. The reason why I'm asking is when we borrow money from one of these Bretton Woods institutions,
Yes.
is it the same requirement?
Yes.
Yes,
It comes
goes
direct.
to the same account.
All right, let me ask the question. Where then does this role of us needing to have an account with the Federal Reserve of the U.S., one of the Federal Reserve, whether it's in New York or wherever, and where does JP Morgan Chase then come in?
Now, this account did not go to Federal Reserve. This is an account at JP Morgan Chase, not the Federal Reserve.
This one is just a simple, ordinary bank account with a bank.
With a bank.
Because for purposes of clarity, Jimmy,
Yes.
JP Morgan Chase is a bank.
It is a
It
bank.
is a bank.
Yes,
It's a
all
commercial
right.
bank.
It is
a
a
bank.
commercial bank.
Yes.
Right.
So a bank within which entities, institutions can open accounts.
Yes.
It's like
Okay?
KCB.
It's exactly.
Yes. It's like KCB.
All right, please carry
Okay.
on.
Now, that letter was written on 19th June by Central Bank, which said, opening of US dollar account for Government of Kenya sovereign bond. This is addressed to the Accountant General at the National Treasury. We are pleased to confirm your request of opening an account at JP Morgan Chase, New York. The account number 6031499985 is titled GOK/CBK Sovereign Bond. Payments into and out of this account shall be made using a SWIFT code. Please arrange to provide mandates for this account. In other words, the signatories.
Right.
This is signed by somebody called John K. Birech, Financial Markets Department, and Sami S. Casero, Authorized Signature, Financial Markets Department.
Okay. Jimmy,
Copied to the Treasury, CS, and the PS at that time.
I'm going to ask again, what would be the need for the government of Kenya to open an account to receive money for state, perhaps, functions, development functions, outside of what is mandated by law for operation?
I think when I was last here, I said that the cornerstone of fraud is concealment. The one thing that this account does is that it is now not in the eyes of the control of budget.
For approval or denying
Correct.
of transactions.
It is when money enters the consolidated fund, the National Exchequer account. It is very difficult for it to move. Very difficult. The controller of budget must authorize any expenditure, and it must have been voted for by Parliament. Line items, as we've said before.
But now with this account,
this account, right, as I'm going to read the next letter, only 2 signatories can move it as they wish. I mean, you're not talking about chicken feed here. Hii ni pesa mingi sana. We have never, and I think it's important you conceptualize this, never has the Treasury received that amount of money in one bulk payment.
But Jimmy,
ever. That at the time, right? You imagine, today that is 300 billion shillings.
Indeed.
Just entering the Exchequer account. Entering our accounts. We don't receive money that way. We receive little bits, as you heard the controller of budget talk about, daily, right? In tax revenue. Then you have what are called tied aid towards our projects, which is difficult to expend. So you never receive cash flow in one day of $2 billion. The Treasury had never received such money in its life. Its lifetime.
There's documentation.
Yes, but I'm saying before this time.
Yeah, but now what I'm asking is, again, if there was nefarious activity taking place here, the documentation is readily available, people can find it, or is it one of those situations where we're saying things are hidden in plain sight because nobody's going to actually go looking for them, because it is unimaginable that you would open an account outside of what is mandated by law to operate with these funds?
You said it better than I could have. You've put it exactly correct. You have hit the nail on the head. Hidden in plain sight. Because after all, who reads? And who would ever imagine that there could be a heist or money laundering of this amount of money? Now, the mandates were given. And on 27th of June, 2014, the signatories, a letter from the Treasury, from the Accountant General's office, mandated 2 people to be the authorized signatories of this new account at J.P. Morgan Chase, New York. Please take note, City, it is not the Federal Reserve. Bernard Mwirore Ndongo, the Accountant General himself. And Julius Musiemi Kilinda, also in his office. Are we on the same page? Are we on the same page? These are their letters. These are their letters. Now, as I said, this is nothing more than an elaborate money laundering scheme. Nothing more.
Did money actually move into those accounts, in and out of those accounts? And then do we know for a fact that they did, and where would they have been going? Because there's one thing to open an account, Jimmy, and then leave it dormant for whatever purpose. But it's a totally different thing to see transactions on the account and how money has been moving in and out. And now, in addition to that question, the Eurobond, which Kenya owes, in order for you to owe something, you must have received it, isn't it?
Correct. Now,
is there proof that that money actually made its way into Kenya and was used on the consolidated fund? I mean, we're saying that it should have been if it was coming into Kenya. Do we then see that that money then came in, the 1.99 billion?
Yeah, what we see from a statement from J.P. Morgan Chase is that money went from Standard Chartered into J.P. Morgan Chase account, Kenya National Treasury account at J.P. Morgan Chase. So that money, 1.99 billion, did enter this account in New York. That we have been given evidence by J.P. Morgan Chase.
Okay.
All right. So that was received in total. All right. So it moved from Standard Chartered, and it started on the 3rd of July, the 3rd of July, and a total sum by the 24th July was in the account. 2nd of July, sorry. A total sum of 1.99 was in that account that had been opened with 2 signatories from Kenya, Bwana Dongo and Bwana Musiemi. Now, we also see thereafter movement, an amount at the time of $604 million of the 2 billion went to pay a syndicated loan that had been taken by the previous regime, it was stated, to Standard Chartered Bank. At the time, it was equivalent to 53 billion shillings.
Which Standard Bank in this country?
No, London.
Okay.
All right. That was the first transaction. And they showed us a SWIFT of that amount leaving.
Can I just ask,
Yes.
when they say they paid that amount, was it a full and complete payment or was it a part payment?
It was supposed to be a full payment of a previous
Syndicated loan. Did
Yes.
that loan actually exist? Was there evidence that such a loan had been taken?
That was not provided to us, but we believe that the accounting of the previous regime may have been not too bad.
Okay.
Now, that SWIFT, you know, they were very good with the information. They gave us the SWIFT copy of that transaction. $604 million went out to Standard Chartered. The second transaction, on the same day, 3rd July,
Same day.
was of $395 million, equivalent at the time to 34 billion shillings. And they showed us a very clear SWIFT of the same, right? And they called it partial drawdown. Went straight from JP Morgan Chase account to the National Exchequer account at the Treasury in Nairobi here.
Okay. Where it's supposed to have gone.
Where it's supposed to have gone in the first place.
Okay.
But I'd just like to ask, this money that had been borrowed by a previous government, supposedly...
The 600.
Yes. Was there evidence that it had not been paid?
Now, all we can say is that the Auditor General at the time, Edward Auko, because he subsequently did an audit on this, proclaimed that that did exist. That loan of the previous regime did exist, and it was paid in full.
By that amount.
Yes.
So this amount cleared the loan.
This amount cleared the loan.
Okay. So we're looking at 900 billion shillings over that period of time due. And one thing sticks out here, Jimmy, is that money borrowed, it would be clear that from what you're saying, this money did not go towards development. And money that is due next year went towards paying another loan, and the rest of the money that then came into Kenya, which you said there was some money that's said to have come into the Exchequer account. Where did that money then go?
We cannot trace it in any use of government. In fact, we can only say that again, because it did not have a vote. It did not. And the Auditor General did not give us clarity on its usage, that is something that must be audited in urgency. The $395 million that came in.
After this 600 something went towards Standard Chartered.
Yes, then 395 came to consolidated, must be audited because we do not know what it went for. It is not assigned to any development project. So we cannot find its use. We cannot find it even in the recurrent expenditure of government. Did not pay anything to do with any recurrent expenditure of the government of Kenya.
So then the money
we
could
don't
be in the
know.
account?
Yes, and we asked. This is where we started getting blocks. Now, it leaves a balance at JP Morgan Stanley of $1 billion. Remember, there were two?
Yes. There were
that
2
accounts for $1 billion.
Yeah.
Now, JP Morgan Stanley account shows, you know, I'm telling you, this is documents they ended up giving us after asking a lot of questions. That apparently that account remained with $1 billion until September. From July to September. You wonder why our money...
Was it an interest-bearing account?
Yes, apparently it has got an interest of $76,000. Right? In the period that it stayed there. Would I check? $1 billion got an interest of $76,000.
Okay.
Okay?
Sour.
Then they say that on 8th of September 2014, an amount of $1 billion, exactly 999, etc., moved from the Federal Reserve, not Federal Reserve, from the JP Morgan Stanley account,
Chase.
Mm-hmm. And they stated that it came to the Exchequer account.
Again?
But, yes.
So
unfortunately, this time, City, before you ask the question, this time they did not show us the SWIFT. Remember the others, they showed us a SWIFT transfer from the JP Morgan Chase account to the Exchequer account. This one, they gave us what you call a redacted SWIFT that ended at the Federal Reserve.
Okay. So meaning some lines
Not lines.
were crossed.
Very many lines.
Yeah.
You can see this was the full page they gave us, and all of this was redacted. Blackened out literally with a pen.
Now, why would somebody want to not show you transaction?
This is the big question. This is our money. Take note, the authenticity of the debt is already in question. Then when you have even said you've received it, because we saw receipt, $1 billion, you do not show us a full SWIFT of where it went, because we could not trace it. They redacted.
But it left the account.
It left the account.
Meaning, when you went to the account, was there evidence of the account balance?
Yes, it said nil as of September 14th, 2000.
They even took the interest, huh?
They even took the interest.
Okay.
So between July and September, because I think the same year, now September, now the account was at zero.
Zero.
Okay.
All right? Now, we could not trace where this money went. And this is what we started asking. Where is this 1 billion? When we asked enough questions, the Treasury very quickly publishes what they call tap sales.
What?
Yes. That this bond was so popular, they even made more sales. Right?
Meaning more people paid
More
for it.
people paid for it.
Okay.
To the extent of $815 million.
So it was oversubscribed.
Oversubscribed in December. And they very quickly show us that this went to Citibank. This was from Citibank. And they very quickly show us a SWIFT transfer.
Of that 800.
Of that 800, leaving Citibank London, going direct into the Exchequer account. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Ostensibly for the same Eurobond.
Yes.
Now, in
No.
addition,
Adding on to.
adding on to, so we've taken $2 billion.
Yes.
1 billion is accounted for
Yes.
in July. 1 billion in September, we cannot find it.
Okay. That's
Because what they gave us
Zero.
did not show where it ended.
Yes.
Yeah, but we know
Then
it
in
left.
December, they have tap sales of $800 million. And that they show us a SWIFT from Citibank coming into an account at CBK.
Now that account at Citibank, is it our account?
Now, it came direct. You see, like now what we were asking before. Why didn't the Standard Chartered
Come
money
direct to
come direct to
consolidate
us
it.
to consolidate it? They were now trying to show us Citibank, which did the tap sales,
Sent the money directly.
sent directly to CBK. All right? So we said, that's very good, but let's go back to the one of September of $1 billion. Where is it? Where is it? Now, we then got into the most interesting thing I have ever believed. It was shocking. Completely shocking. Completely shocking. I'm telling you, you've never seen a fraud scheme like this. What eventually then happened is that they decided they are going to show us documentation of money being received into something at central bank called the sovereign bond account.
We have such a thing.
Can you imagine?
I'm just asking because it is possible we have such a thing and I didn't know.
Can you imagine?
Since when?
Since when do they suddenly have a new account called the sovereign bond account? And this sovereign bond account now has got money that the same two individuals of the Treasury, Bwana Ndongo and Bwana Kilinda, are now transferring money from that to the Exchequer account. So they are saying that money being received from the JP Morgan Chase, $1 billion, and the Citibank went into something called a sovereign bond account, and they even give us an account number.
At the Central Bank of Kenya.
At the Central Bank of Kenya. And they call it proceeds from the sovereign bond account number 10021727764 should be transferred to the exchequer account thereafter.
Let me just understand. A sovereign bond, that's a financial instrument that a government issues.
Yes.
So why are we paying money into it?
Correct. Take note. We open a separate account illegally at JP Morgan Chase.
Yes.
We open a separate account at CBK,
Yes.
Kenya, illegally, instead of it going to the exchequer account. Why? Avoiding COB. Are we clear?
Me, I'm actually not clear because this thing is actually begin to. No. What you're saying makes sense. It is why all these things, because Eurobond is the equivalent in Europe, so to speak, of our sovereign bond.
Yes.
If my understanding of these things is correct. It's a bond, but depends on where it is issued. But this one, for money to come into that account, I assumed that the government had issued a bond that was oversubscribed. Okay. So I would ask, when was this bond issued? If it is oversubscribed, okay. During which period of time? Because I would assume there are processes by which the government does these things, and usually in the public domain, so you know. There's a notice that the government is issuing this bond, and then people bid, and et cetera, But I don't know of that, and then I hear of money coming into an account for that particular bond. And that bond I don't even know about.
Correct.
So what we're asking,
you see my confusion.
Correct.
So
Correct.
essentially,
CT.
for Euro, because these things are made public,
Yes.
there would be an announcement of the same,
Yes.
intent to issue,
Yes.
and then at issuance, again, there would be another notice of the same,
Yes.
and you're given the reasons as to what this money is then going to be used for.
Yes.
Is it not?
Yes.
That information, by law,
Yes.
is required to be made public.
Yes.
Okay.
A prospectus is even done.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
it is.
Now, I want to assure you of something, that what you are seeing here is nothing more, as I said earlier, than a money laundering scheme. Nothing more. That is why you have all these queries. Why open separate bank accounts to the account established in law by the Constitution of Kenya? What are you hiding? In money laundering, that is the art, like fraud. It is the cornerstone of perpetuating money laundering or fraud. You open accounts outside of the law. One was open at JP Morgan Chase and one was open in the Treasury. Now, what is most interesting is that it is in a series of something like 8 letters. In fact, it's exactly 7 letters that they try and show us that money entered into an account at CBK called Sovereign Bond Account, and that they transferred that money to the exchequer account.
Okay.
They could not show us any other evidence other than those 7 letters.
Okay.
Right? Now, those letters are simple instructions to CBK. Right? And they start, very interestingly, on the 15th of September to try and show that the money of 1 billion that we're querying, the 15th of September, they transferred part of the proceeds of that money, which they so-called said entered into this bond account, of 25 billion shillings.
So
Right?
that money was supposed to be in the exchequer.
In the exchequer.
All right.
No, take note. It was in us. It apparently, remember we were querying, where did $1 billion go?
Yes.
Yes.
In September.
Yes.
And
But
they
we know
redact,
where-
and we have a redacted SWIFT.
Yes.
So now they claim in these letters addressed to the Bank Services Department of CBK by instructions. These are transfer instructions. That, kindly transfer 25 billion from this account, sovereign bond account, to the exchequer account. So what they are saying is that, you see that money, that 1 billion, part of the proceeds transfer because you received it in an account called sovereign bond account.
Yes.
Transfer it to what? Exchequer account, national exchequer account.
Okay. If it is indeed money that was transferred from wherever, is there
evidence?
Yes.
No. There's not even an acknowledgement from CBK. Because one thing we have previously from CBK is an acknowledgement to the Treasury, right? From CBK. For example, the 395 that had earlier been transferred to the check account.
Yeah.
You have an acknowledgement. We confirm we have credited your account with $395 million. This was in July, right? 4th of July.
So it's common practice.
Common practice. We have credited your account, in other words, the account of the national check account. Here, on these ones, there's no confirmation from CBK at all. At all. They produced no letter confirming from CBK to the accountant general that they are in receipt. Even others have shown exchange rate. You know how you have exchange rate at the time? We have transferred Kenya shillings at an exchange rate of this. That they showed of the 395. But all these other amounts, they did not show.
Because even if that money was wired from some other account, it had to be in a denomination of that particular country.
Yes.
And the exchange rate would also have been
It was in
indicated.
dollars.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So now, these letters, and I want you to see them. There are a series of 7 letters. And they start in September and end in June.
The following year.
Here we go, June the following year, right? So the end of the financial year.
2020.
Now, I want you, CT, to just note something very clearly here with, you see, every letter must have a folio number.
What's a folio number?
In other words, reference number.
Okay.
Right? And you will see very interesting numbers here. Just to show you, somebody here was just cooking up documents after the fact. I want you to specifically look at that one, which is dated what?
This one is
Dated, the date is over
September.
there. Right, 15 September.
2014.
Signed by who?
This thing is signed by a certain BM Dugu
Yes.
and a certain JM Kilinda.
Yes.
Yes, these are
Of how much, what is that instruction to transfer?
25 billion. These zeros are meaning, they are 9
Yes.
zeros.
Yes. It's an instruction to CBK.
Yes.
What is the folio number?
Folio number is this thing here.
Yes.
It's AGCONF full stop stroke 17 stroke 01 stroke 1 volume stroke 1 stroke 25.
Yes.
Let me go to the next
Aya,
one.
go to the next, no, go to the one after that.
This one is murky.
Go to the next one.
This one I can't see.
That one.
It's supposed to be the same thing, isn't it?
Yes, of how much? What date?
This one is 21st January 2015. AGCONF 1701 stroke volume 1 then 1 stroke 4. It's a different folio number. It's a different folio number because this one is 15, this one is 144.
No, sorry, not that one. You went too far. This one.
Yes.
What date is that?
This is 23rd October 2014. Yes.
And the first one was?
September.
Okay. What is the folio number?
The folio number is the same.
For a different amount.
The folio number is the same.
And what is the amount?
It's 25 billion.
And the first one?
25 billion on October 2014, 25 billion September 2014.
And
So
the same folio number?
Yes, it is actually.
How is that possible?
So it's a duplication of the same amount to make it look as though it's a different transaction.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then also there's
And a different date.
the received stamp, and that's 15 September. This one is a received stamp of 30th October, yet the letter is dated, I understand, 29th October, but then it's vague.
But the folio number?
Same.
Same.
Folio number.
That is people hurriedly trying to conceal a fraud.
Okay.
The point I'm trying to make here, and it's important to understand this, is that this is the only evidence we have that the so-called $1 billion came to Kenya. The SWIFT transfer did not indicate the $1 billion came to Kenya.
No, that's the only evidence that seems to point us in the direction. Because if indeed it did come, everything that you've said points to certain processes and procedures that are followed. Yes, it came from Citibank in London, it came here. But those things, these transfers, as you've mentioned, man, the documentation is aplenty. There's a lot of information about that transfer.
No, this is very, I want you to just see it chronologically.
Yes.
So we got $2 billion from JP Morgan Stanley.
Yes, we did.
The first one, we can account in SWIFT transfers, right? One that went to Standard Chartered Bank London
Yes.
of $600 million.
Yes.
That we have got the SWIFT transfer. Another of 395, we have a SWIFT transfer. It entered the exchequer account.
Accounts, yes.
Right?
That's documentation.
That is documentation.
Yes.
The 1 billion that remained in September, up to September, we have no evidence it entered into the account at Central Bank.
Save for
not even in terms of regard of the SWIFT.
Right.
That it did not, they did not show us that it entered a sovereign fund account or the national exchequer account. We have no evidence of that amount of money.
We don't. But then this money that they were transferring, where did it come from?
Now, this is the point, that those are just simple letters.
It's not.
We have no acknowledgement.
Is there evidence of any transfer of that amount?
No.
Jimmy.
No evidence. And no evidence of even acknowledgement from CBK that they're even going by those instructions.
Why is this important, Jimmy?
Why it is important is this, that how else do you account for something? Right? First and foremost, the money did not come to the national exchequer account. So understand that it did not come to consolidated fund. It was being transacted between hidden accounts in New York and a hidden account in Kenya. But $1 billion cannot even be found in hidden account in Kenya. It never ever came to Kenya.
So
it never went into any account. And what you then see thereafter is a purported scheme with those letters to try and show that there is documents. The same two individuals who are the account holders in New York are the same ones issuing instructions here for some sovereign fund account. And there is no acknowledgement from CBK of those transfers. Whereas when you see the amount of 395, you have acknowledgement from CBK of not only its receipt, right, but its foreign exchange component.
I just want to
change.
ask a question. Is it the normal practice that when the government of Kenya receives money from whether it's a Eurobond or whatever source, that the minimum or maximum number of signatories that are required for moving this money are two senior officials who are designated, and that they have the authority to move this money as they see fit? Or are there specific instructions as to how that money must be moved and where it should be moved to?
That's why, City, I want to go back to the consolidated fund, the national exchequer account. All revenues of government must enter that account.
Yes.
And the signatories are clear, all right?
Yes.
For exchequer issues. In other words, the exchequer issues that are issued for the movement of money.
Yes.
And all those exchequer issues must have somebody who must approve them, called the controller of budget. Because all those items must be in the budget.
Okay.
They must be funding something on the budget that has been approved by the people of Kenya through parliament. Anything outside of that is illegal.
That's how.
So what has happened here is that you have money that has been received in an illegal account at JP Morgan in New York. You have money so-called received in an illegal account at CBK called Sovereign Bond Account. And that is some of it. We don't even know, right? Because we have no evidence of it being received in that sovereign fund account.
Even as the time takes, Jimmy, winding down to this, the big question here then is, should Kenya pay this money that's due in 2024?
No. First and foremost, in fact, in totality, we should not pay it as $2 billion. We did not approve it anywhere in our budgets, in our parliament, for any development project. The whole 2 billion, forget about even just the 1 billion we cannot find. The entire 2 billion, we did not approve. We also never approved for it to go into funny accounts all over the place, like New York. We did not approve. That is not our law. And then on top of that, I want to assure you, $1 billion, which is equivalent today of 150 billion, never came into this country, never landed into any account here, was outright theft by a regime. And as I told you previously, the regime is very clear who is responsible.
For this.
The warrants of the treasury of any money moving are signed by the President of the Republic of Kenya. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is personally responsible for this money.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.